There are many different ways to play Skyrim. With all the different weapon styles and builds you can make, there's a lot of different powerful builds you can set up. But the two that really stand out as exceptionally powerful is the Vampire Lord and the Werewolf. Both of these allow you to transform into its respective form and unlock you a ton of unique and powerful abilities. They both have a ton of similarities, but are also very, very different and have a lot of unique advantages and disadvantages. So, which one is the better option? Let's start off by looking at the Werewolf. For those of you who don't know, to become a werewolf, you simply just have to become a member of the circle of the companions. This is actually fairly easy, as you only really have to do one random intimidation quest and then one real dungeon quest in Dustman's Cairn. After that, Skjor will ask you to meet him in the Underforge, and Aela will let you drink her wolf blood, and boom, you have lycanthropy. Once you first get the ability, you are already pretty strong. Considering you get this pretty early game, it's actually pretty balanced. But once you use it a lot and unlock a lot of the perks, you can quickly get extremely powerful. Especially considering if you get the werewolf ability, you're probably going to be doing the companion's quest line anyways. It almost seems like they intended for you to start leveling up your werewolf abilities on the silver hand. And, you know, just after a few dungeons, you're already going to be like halfway through the perk tree. In werewolf form, you obviously have 0 defense, but you have a ton of health and a crap ton of stamina. You also move insanely quick and insanely fast when sprinting. At top speed, you easily run significantly faster than even a horse, making the werewolf the easiest and best way to travel from faraway locations. And if you're playing in survival mode, it's extremely convenient as well because you can't fast travel, so having that extreme speed it saves a lot of time. The damage you produce is also extremely high, much higher than most melee weapons at this stage in the game. Against groups of enemies like bandit outposts, the werewolf performs extremely well. Most enemies you can just claw to death really easily, especially with your sprinting power attack. It is extremely OP, you could almost one-shot them. But even the ones that you can't, you can simply do a moving power attack to stagger them, and then just claw them as they try to get back up. And if you ever get low on health, somehow, you can just use your howling ability to scare all of the enemies away, and then just attack them as they flee. And then once they're dead, just eat their bodies for the quick HP. And honestly, in my playtesting, I found that the werewolf was so powerful that I genuinely just used it in as many encounters as I possibly could, because it was a lot better than my current equipment could even really perform. There's also a perk that sort of allows you to increase the damage you produce in a werewolf form as you go, so it effectively scales the werewolf as you play, so you're constantly getting more and more powerful as well. In the sprinting attack, it is completely busted. Not only is it amazing against humans, as you can see in the gameplay, but against dragons and mammoths, it's a complete joke. Like, honestly, look at how quickly I can take this dragon out. Literally in seconds, just from spamming the sprinting attack, he is completely destroyed. And it's the exact same thing for mammoths too. Giants aren't even a challenge because you just stagger them and then maul them, then, you know, do it again until they die. There isn't really any situation that I can think of where a werewolf wouldn't be an amazing approach to it. I'd say that with such insane speed and damage, the werewolf is honestly an amazing playstyle early game and mid game, maybe even a little bit into the late game, honestly. There's an added bonus, the Ring of Harsine. You can use this to get another daily use of the werewolf, because if you don't know, you can only become a werewolf once a day, and it is a little bit annoying having to wait 24 hours after every usage. If you go to Falkreath, there's a quest about a man named Sinding who stole a ring from Harsine, and it got cursed, and, you know, he became a werewolf and killed a little kid. Anyways, if you complete the quest, siding with Sinding, letting him live, Harsine will gift you with an uncursed Harsine's ring, which allows you an extra werewolf usage per day. So, with all of this, all these amazing things, and what are the downsides? There's only one. You do not get the rested or the well-rested bonus, ever. You can never get that. But honestly, is that really such a massive issue? Granted, well-rested is a pretty good bonus. If you don't know, if you sleep in a bed that you own or that you bought, you get 10% extra leveling. And if you sleep in any bed that you don't own, it's 5%. So not having that is slightly annoying, I'm gonna admit. This negative is kind of counteracted, in my opinion, because you're now immune to disease, now that you have lycanthropy. Not really that much of a negative, especially considering just how amazing werewolf form is. Alright, so you've heard the case for the werewolf, now let's talk about the vampire lord. If you don't know, the vampire lord is something you unlock in the Dawn Guard DLC. You must side with the vampires after completing literally just the first quest for Izran and meeting Serana. Once you take her back home to her castle, her dad, Lord Harkin, will gift you with the vampire blood. Something to quickly note, if you're already a werewolf and you accept the blood of the vampire lord, then it actually cures you of your lycanthropy. But it doesn't really matter though, because you can get lycanthropy again later on, so it's not that big of a deal, but it is just something to know. Anyways, the first immediate advantage to being a vampire is that you can do it anytime you want, however many times you want. So it's not this one a day bullcrap, it's infinite times a day, which I think is really convenient. I really like that. Also, you can fly insanely fast, not quite as fast as the werewolf sprint, but if you need to get somewhere really quick, it is still better than a horse in my opinion, and it's free. And it is really fast, so that's a huge advantage. The first downside to a vampire lord is the attacks aren't nearly as insane as the werewolf. They are very good, don't get me wrong. They're just not quite as insanely powerful as the werewolves. First of all, they do rely on magicka, making them sort of limited in use. You can only use them so much, and you have to be sort of more... Yeah, you have to be a bit more strategic about it. You can't just blindly go swinging your claws around. And not only that, but they do less damage anyways. They do decent damage, don't get me wrong. And they also do splash damage, which is really nice. And the damage that they do is lifesteal, meaning you damage the enemies and you take their life from them. So it's really easy to stay high HP, especially with the really low defense that the vampire lord has. When you're on the ground, the vampire lord can use his claw attack, which is, in my opinion, very weak. I don't want to sound like I'm downplaying the vampire lord, but it's just a lot of his things are good, but with a disadvantage. His main magic abilities cost magicka, and you don't have that much magicka as a vampire lord. And, you know, they don't do that much damage. The claws do decent damage, but it's not as good as claws with the werewolf, because the werewolf you can at least stagger enemies. You do a lot more damage, but with the vampire lord you don't stagger enemies. You're very vulnerable, especially considering you don't have healing potions or healing magic, and you'd have no defense. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed in that type of situation. The vampire lord though does have a few saving graces, like the abilities you get from the perk points. By the way, leveling up the vampire lord's perks is insanely fast. Like maybe like 2 or 3 times faster than the werewolf. It's actually crazy. 2 of the vampire perks that I really like is the paralysis one. This helps a ton counteracting the negatives I previously mentioned. You can paralyze an enemy and then just claw him as much as you need. This is really good against single target enemies like a Hagraven, but against multiple, like 2 or 3 enemies, like if you're fighting Dawn Guard, or if even just something as simple as bandits, then the paralysis kind of loses its appeal. It does take one of the enemies out of the fight, so to speak, but it really doesn't gain you that much advantage, and you're probably just better off trying to splash damage both of them at the same time. There's also a Gargoyle summon, which I really like. You can raise dead, but I think the Gargoyle summon is honestly sick as fuck. So I really like using it. The rest of the abilities, not too special in my opinion. There is a choking ability, but it takes so much magicka that you can't really use it. Oh, and let's not forget about the elephant in the room. As a vampire lord, you are a vampire, which sounds obvious, but there's a lot of downsides to being a vampire. Number 1, you are just completely useless in daylight. You have no stamina regen and no magicka regen. And you have less magicka and less stamina. Like you basically just can't sprint in the slightest, and you can't do any magic in the daytime unless you're inside or you just wait till nighttime. Granted, being a vampire makes you 100% immune to disease and poison, but I just don't think it's worth the downside of not having stamina or magicka in the day. I honestly hate fighting enemies at night, and I really hate not being able to sprint around the city. It's so annoying to me. Anyways, let's just do a quick recap. As a werewolf, you deal insane damage, you have insane speed, and you can easily take on any dungeon, any group of enemy, any giant, any dragon, any moment, anything. Although you can only use it once a day, and you can't loot while in the werewolf form, meaning after you clear the dungeon, you have to become human again and then go loot afterwards. You also can never become well rested. As a vampire lord, you are extremely useless during the daytime, with less magicka and stamina, no magicka and stamina regen as well. And in vampire lord form, you do decent damage, and you can move pretty quickly with some pretty cool abilities, and you're completely immune to poison and disease. You significantly lack damage in group fights, and you're honestly only really good against, one high level enemy that's on its own. All in all, I think the Vampire Lord is a specialty sort of ability that you use in specific situations, but it's just not worth the permanent downsides of being a vampire, So for all of these reasons, I say Werewolf wins by quite a bit, honestly. It is just so insanely powerful, and there's almost no noticeable downsides to it. The Vampire Lord really is a cool idea, but there's just too many disadvantages for an ability that you can only really use sometimes, and when you do use it, it's not even that great. It felt like once I actually got the Vampire Lord ability, I was already, over-leveled for it. It didn't really feel balanced for the position in the game that you would unlock it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's anything I left out, or if you disagree, or if you agree. I want to hear you guys' takes in the comments. And, yeah, thank you so much for watching the whole thing. It really, really means a ton to me. Drop a like, drop a sub, and, peace out.